Hey guys, what's up? This is Leaf from Complexity, and you're watching the esports historian Thorin's YouTube channel.
Now, Zonic's law, as it has been dubbed by the plebs in the community, and it's become kind of a meme, goes like this. Essentially, it can be summarized as 11 to 4 in the old MR15 system, not MR12 that we use now. 11 to 4 is the most dangerous halftime score. Except it was never a law by Zonic, nor is it one. It's actually more of an insight into how people frame leads, advantages, and scores as representative of such. So here's basically what he did was, he tweeted back in 2018, so this is right around the time that Astralis is going prime Astralis, he just tweeted 11 to 4, dangerous lead. Then the next year in February, he tweeted out 11 to 4, couldn't find a better GIF. And then in 2020, he said, probably I think the iconic one, I'll say it again, 11 to 4 is like 2-0 in football, the most dangerous lead, because obviously when people are up 2-0, they think they've won the game, but a number of times teams will come back to draw or even beat you because there's so much time left in the game, right? So what needs to be talked about here is this. I've done a reflection with Zonic. I think he's a very intelligent guy in general, but about Counter-Strike, I mean, he's got one of those guys where if you want to talk about like Counter-Strike IQ, his might be the highest ever. The guy's a genius, right? So the point to make is this. He isn't saying that like 11 to 4 is cursed, or like as in it'd be better to even be 10 to 5, or that you always lose when you're 11 to 4, or most upsets come from being up 11 to 4 and then the danger kicking in and then you lose. That's why it's not a law. It's not an axiom. It's not actually like a mechanism of the universe. It's more a point about people, competitors' mentality. And so you've got to understand specifically, this is coming from a coach, and it's something you can imagine he probably said to his players when the half changed in a match, right? They go 11-4 up on a map. Classic one would be like the nuke rework. And then you think, hey, we basically won this game. And that's exactly what you tell your players. Hey, guys, the most dangerous lead on a map like this is on CT side to go 11-4 and think you've won the game. Because basically, the key point that's being made here is the framing is this is the end of one half of play. Notice he didn't put like 10-2 is the most dangerous one in MR15. That would be incredibly dangerous, but there's still rounds to be played. He's talking about what your mindset is at the end of a half of play. So this is when you finished one side of the game, could be T or CT side, depending on the map, and now what your expectations are based on what you've done for what you're going to need to do on the other half, on the other side. So crucially, you're not going to be playing the same side that you just earned the 11 rounds on. So 11 to 4 in the MR15 and the old economy, yeah, it feels like you're right at the finish line. It feels like what an amazing first half. We're so close, right? But as I often would put it on desks, a similar kind of a point, 5 rounds to win can be a lot depending on the map, the side, and the economy in that state. Like, it feels like a lot when you've only played 15, but suddenly when you played a bunch more rounds, it's not going to feel like that. So halfway into the game, yeah, it feels like you've almost won if you're up 11-4, but 11 rounds isn't 14 rounds. And by the way, even on 14 rounds, depending on how many are left and what side and what economy you're at, that can be hard to force your way over the line. Just ask Carragher when he was up 15-11 and 13-7, etc. in the Boston Major Final. How about in American football? The Seahawks were 1 yard from scoring a touchdown, winning overtime, and being the champions of the Super Bowl. But instead, obviously, Malcolm Butler picked it off in 2014, didn't he? So they didn't get that. Well, 1 yard just feels like you've almost won when you got 4 downs. Similar sort of analogy. So think about this. Imagine you are up 11-4, and then you lose the pistol round on the second half. Maybe you went 11-4 on nuke. You lose the T-pistol, so now it's 11-5. You don't win the force back, so now it's 11-6. Then you just lose the next round where maybe you have like a semi-bye. Okay, now it's 11-7. All of a sudden, you're at 11-7. So quickly, you're at 11-7. Now, by the way, then when you have a proper gun round, if you lose that one, it's 11-8 already. And if you're economically poor after you lose the gun round, that's 11-9. You've only played 4 rounds, and all of a sudden it's 11-9. They're right back in the position. And actually, if you'd blown all those rounds on a nuke T side, now it's actually looking like they're going to have a good chance to win, right? I mean, at this point in time, there's what, like 11 rounds to go, and now it's them who needs to get like 7 at this point in time in MR15, right? They're in a great position to do so. Now, all of a sudden, your advantage is gone, even though the game still feels like there's loads left to play, but suddenly that advantage is just evaporated, right? So in this scenario, because you changed half, your advantages from the first half exist only on the scoreboard. You don't get to carry anything else except the score over to the second half. So before the pistol round, the economy completely resets. There's no like economic advantage that means you're going to win now. You're going to have to actually play out the rounds and win them as the better team. Side balance plays into it. Think how different an 11-4 CT half on nuke would be to a T half that was 11-4. One of them you might have won. Same with overpass. You might have just won the game already. But on CT half, that enormous lead isn't as much of an enormous lead because actually it's somewhat par for the course that teams have large leads on CT on some of these maps, right? The MR12 equivalent, in my opinion, would be saying 9-3 as a half. Because then, if you lose the pistol, it's 9-4. Then you don't win the force of the second. Now it's 9-6. You've only had to play 3 rounds, so suddenly it's 9-6. That big lead that felt huge isn't that big, and you still got loads of work to do to go ahead and win your game. You're going to need 13 rounds. You still need to win 4 rounds. Like, actually, you're not in that amazing a position as maybe you imagined you were. Then I actually think this is all about mentality. It's not about the specific literal reality of the score. It's about, like, think about this. The opposing coach, say it's Zonic that's on the end of, and his team winning 4 rounds and the other team winning 11. First of all, you'd say the same thing. Hey, remember though, guys, 11-4 is a really deceptive score. So actually, they're not as far ahead as they seem. In fact, you know what? Because we're now swapping to the side they just won 11 rounds on, bear in mind, guys, we can replicate what they did. If we're the better team, if we're well prepared, and we've even just seen what they did that worked, why can't we get 11 rounds on this half? It's doable. It's possible. And then all of a sudden, we'll be right back in the game. Meanwhile, if he is coaching the team, he's going to be warning them, don't have that mentality. Don't think that like you're so far ahead already. Because here's the thing, if you think you're ahead, it's not just that like then inexplicably because of the curse of Zonic's law, you will lose the rounds. No. What happens is you will take some rounds for granted though, as in you will think essentially, yada, 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 question mark, somehow we win. Oh, we won the game, right? That is a classic killer for inexperienced teams. Because it's the same reason, I'll give you the analogy, as an individual player that everyone who's ever played Counter-Strike will understand. Think how many times you or a teammate is in a 1v5 or a 1v4, essentially an almost functionally impossible round to win. Think how many times it still can get down to a 1v1 or 1v2. Now, that should never happen in a 5v1, in a 4v1, but the reason it can happen is some of the teammates of the other team will start to take it for granted that one of their 4 or 5 are going to kill you. So what will happen classically in a 1v5 like that is, because your odds on winning are so bad, the first guy might even try and knife you, the second guy will maybe just rush you, the third guy is still 3v1, will just think, I can take a duel here, if I lose, someone else will trade me, I'll get it. It's only when you get down to either the 3 people left, or I would say more like the 2 and the 1, and especially the 1, that suddenly all the advantage is gone, and actually now you're in a scenario where, hey, you've got pressure on yourself, you actually have to win the round. Now, before it felt so obvious, this guy will get him, or this guy will get him. Wait a minute, it doesn't matter, actually, they might be doing damage, you might actually still have a very high chance of winning. Suddenly, it's going to seem like a way more imposing and intimidating task to kill this guy 1v2, or if he plants the bomb, than it did when it was 1v5, and you felt like nothing could go wrong, and you were definitely going to win this particular round. So, one of the factors I think is at play here with why people have taken what's actually a very interesting insight when you unpack it and you understand the game, and they've reduced it down to this incredibly simplistic, stupid concept that it's a law and that 11-4 is just like, mathematically, or like, because God, as Zonic said, that just means it's the most dangerous half. There's a classic Bertrand Russell quote I love that explains this phenomenon. It goes like this: a stupid man's report of what a clever man says can never be accurate because he unconsciously translates what he hears into something he can understand. It's apparently from a book called A History of Western Philosophy. Like, that's basically what's happening here. People have taken a very interesting insight and they've just made it simplistic and on its face value. It's just a dangerous scar, so just divide it or you lose. Like, you've missed the whole point as a result of that. Like, there was actually a similar one in League of Legends. Maybe I'll do a video on one day where the Dignitas mid laner Skara went on stream and he was talking about Team Coast, which was like an up-and-coming team with some good players, and he had a line where he said, up until they lose the game, they are winning. And everyone on Reddit was like, lol, what a fucking idiot he is. That's every single team ever in every pro match. You're always winning until you lose. And I remember sitting there going, that's not at all the insight he's making. And the only stupid one is you. He's not saying every team is winning in a game until the moment they are losing or they lose. That's not even true. That you start the game even. Some games you're behind the whole game and then you lose. Some games you're behind the whole game and then you win at the end. And it's definitely not the case that just by not losing the game, you're winning. People actually made that so reductive, they missed the entire point. He was talking about a team that would get into winning situations again and again and again. That's why the quote after that was, he said something like, you would watch Team Coast and go, wow, this game is going great. So in other words, not like every single pro match or competitive match we've all ever played until we lost. The game was going great, and then they would find a way to lose. They would throw the game. They would suddenly, while they were winning, start to do the things that would lose them the game. That's very different from everyone is winning until the moment they lose. That's not the case at all. It's a nonsense interpretation, and actually, it's the idiot saying that it's wasting your time, not Skara. Skara made a really great point. So, as people will know, I love to examine principles of the game, different analytical lenses to add. Like a classic one, obviously, was I've often pointed out that the most dominant teams, a massive sign of that is that they win the opponent's map pick, not just because they're good on that map, but because they understand the psychological dominance you create when actually your opponent can't just rely, he'll win his map, you win your map, and then there's the third and it's in the middle. No. When you can come and take that from them, that's how you 2-0 people, not just even in the sense that you're good on your map, but that's how you just break people. That's why the greatest teams of all time follow that pattern. Similar one, I've often pointed out, it's not about how many rounds, in this particular sense, this fits perfectly. It's not about how many rounds you got left. You might have 2 rounds left to win, but the question is that on like the old deep before it was reworked nuke and you're on T side and there's 3 rounds in the game? Because if you were to get 2 T rounds, gun rounds, and there's only 3 left and they've got full CT economy, you're actually not the one that's most likely to do that. Odds are they're going to win the map, and actually you won't be getting it, even though it's only 2 rounds. So I actually think the Zonic's law is just a very interesting insight that has a lot of benefit, especially if you're a pro player or a broadcast talent, or you're someone who wants to understand the flow of a match, and especially how psychology affects the way you will actually execute things in the game, how much effort you will think is required, whether you feel as though there's a sense where you're magnetically being pulled towards a win. Whereas in this case, when you swap halves, you still have a whole bunch of work ahead of you that you're going to have to legitimately just fundamentally execute on this half and be the better team in these rounds to win, not just because you've got some crazy lead that's giving you momentum, which is another psychological component. Events come and go, fame rises and then falls away. You have a job, you lose a job. You do one thing, you have to move on to another. But one of the cool things about my career is I have my own support network who's always got my back. So I always know I can rely on the support to do the work I want to do and talk the way I want to talk, and not have to follow certain rules that others arbitrarily have to follow. And that support group is, of course, called the Illuminati, my Patreon community. This video and all the others on my channel was kindly supported by Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Frisky, Ahmed Hadjou, Tobias Bernasconi, Thorin, Tosh, Jensen Goh, Animosity, and you know it, always my main man Jerky's minion, rocking with me, ride or die. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for a future episode of Reflections or a talk show? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming guests are? Maybe you want to ask me a question for my video AMA, where I tend to go quite in depth, or perhaps you want to take part in one of those really long donated discussions where we talk about whatever you're into in esports. Well, if any of those perks or any of the others catch your fancy, join the Illuminati today via the Patreon link in the description box, where down below.